The metal deck plates creaked under Captain James Walker's boots as he walked through the empty corridors of the U.S. Defiant. The sound echoed off the walls, reminding him of just how few crew members remained on board. A ship designed for a crew of 300 now ran with barely 50 people. The skeleton crew kept the basics running, but that was about it. Walker stopped at a viewport and looked at his ship's reflection in the reinforced glass. The Defiant's hull showed its age. 30 years of service had left their mark. Paint peeled off in patches, revealing the gray metal underneath. Some called it ugly. His own crew had nicknamed it Old Rust. But Walker saw something different when he looked at his ship. He saw a fighter that had survived dozens of battles and still stood ready for more. The captain's tablet buzzed. Another message from command, probably asking about the decommissioning schedule. They wanted the Defiant stripped and scrapped within the month. Walker ignored it and kept walking. He had more important things to do than read about how his ship was worthless. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez worked on an open panel, tools scattered around her feet. She didn't stop working when Walker entered, but she did shake her head. "They're really going to scrap her, aren't they, Captain?" "Not if I can help it," Walker said, picking up a wrench and handing it to her. "What's broken this time?" "Nothing's broken. I'm making improvements." Martinez wiped grease from her hands and grinned. "The brass thinks this ship is outdated. I'll show them outdated. Did you know our old reactor can push out 40% more power than the new models? The safety limits were set way too low back then." Walker raised an eyebrow. "Is that safe?" "Safer than those new reactors. They pack too much into too small a space. One hit in the wrong place and boom." Martinez patted the Defiant's reactor housing. "This old girl, she's built like a bunker. Sure, the power output is lower on paper, but she can take a beating and keep running." Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's comm system. "Captain to the bridge," the voice said. "Priority message from command." Walker sighed. "Keep up the good work, Chief. Don't let anyone tell you this ship is finished." The bridge felt too empty with just 3 people manning it. Walker remembered when every station had 2 crew members, with others standing ready as backups. Now most stations stayed dark. His tablet buzzed again as he sat in the captain's chair. This time, he opened the message. The orders were clear. Due to budget cuts, the Defiant's decommissioning had been moved up. They wanted the ship back in port by the end of the week. Walker's hands tightened on the tablet's edges. "Sir," his communications officer asked, "everything okay?" "They're pushing up the schedule," Walker said. "Want us back in port immediately." The young officer looked around the bridge, at all the worn but working stations. "But what about our patrol route? This sector will be unprotected. Command says they'll send a new ship to cover it." Walker stood up and walked to the main viewport. "Eventually. Could be weeks before they get around to it." He stared at the stars, thinking about the 3 colony worlds that depended on the Defiant's presence. Small colonies, sure. Nothing critical to the war effort. But there were families out there. Children. They slept better knowing the Union warship washed over them. Walker made his decision. He turned to his crew. "Send a message back to command. Tell them we're having engine trouble. Nothing serious, but we need to run at reduced speed. Should take us." He did some quick math. At least 2 weeks to reach port. His bridge crew tried to hide their smiles. They knew there was nothing wrong with the engines. Martinez had them running better than ever. But if command wanted to write off the Defiant as a broken-down relic, Walker would use that to his advantage. "Sir," his sensor operator called out. "Long-range scans picking up something strange. Might be sensor ghosts, but..." Walker walked to the sensor station. The officer pointed to several faint signals at the edge of their range. They flickered in and out, like ships trying to hide their presence. "How many contacts?" "Hard to tell with these old sensors, sir. Between 30 and 40, I think." Walker nodded slowly. The Defiant sensors were old, but they were also simple. Modern stealth systems were designed to fool more advanced scanners. Sometimes older technology had unexpected advantages. Keep monitoring them, Walker ordered. But don't adjust the sensors. Let them think we haven't spotted them yet. He returned to his chair and opened a comm channel to engineering. Chief Martinez, remember how you said this ship could give more than they thought? We might need to test that soon. About time, Martins replied. I've got some surprises ready. Just say when. Walker looked at the sensor display again. The mysterious ships were still there, still trying to hide. He thought about the colonies, about how many lives depended on the Defiant doing its job. Command might have written off this ship, but Walker knew better. The Defiant had 30 years of battle experience built into its bones. Every scar, every patch, every repair told a story of survival. Send another message to Command, he told his communications officer. Tell them our engines are going to need even more work than we thought. We'll have to extend our patrol while we fix them. As his crew relayed the message, Walker smiled. Let everyone think the Defiant was broken down and helpless. Let them underestimate this old warship. Sometimes the strongest weapons were the ones your enemy never saw coming. In engineering, Martinez and her team worked through the night, pushing the ship systems well beyond their official limits. They knew what was coming. The whole crew did. They'd all chosen to stay when others transferred off, seeing the same thing Walker saw in the Defiant. Not a relic, but a warrior that refused to quit. The mysterious ships moved closer, still thinking themselves undetected. But the Defiant's crew saw them. The old ship systems might not be modern, but they worked just fine. Walker ordered the crew to battle stations quietly, not wanting to alert their watchers. Ready to show them what a broken-down old ship can do. He asked his bridge crew. They responded with determined nods. The Defiant might have been written off by Command, but her crew knew better. Sometimes the best ships weren't the newest or the most advanced. Sometimes they were the ones that had earned their strength through years of service, through battle scars and hard-won experience. The unknown ships crept closer, and Walker let them come. The Defiant waited, playing the part of the helpless old warship, while her crew prepared for what would become one of the greatest battles in Union history. They had no way of knowing it yet, but the ship that everyone had written off was about to remind the galaxy why humanity's older warships were still worth fearing. In his captain's chair, Walker watched the sensor readings and smiled. Let them come. The Defiant might be old, but she wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. And soon, very soon, she would prove it to everyone. The first real warning came 3 hours before dawn. Ship time. The Defiant's sensors picked up energy spikes from the approaching ships. They were powering up their weapons. Walker stood at his command station, watching the tactical display as more details became clear. The mysterious ships had stopped trying to hide. 35 ships, the sensor officer reported, his voice steady despite the news. Dominion warships, Captain. Looks like they didn't expect anyone to spot them so soon. Walker nodded. The Dominion, humanity's newest enemies, had a reputation for attacking what they thought were easy targets. They probably saw the Defiant as exactly that. An old, broken-down ship they could destroy without much effort. Send a message to Command, Walker ordered. But run it through our old encryption systems, not the new ones. He knew the Dominion had broken several of the Union's modern codes. Sometimes older was better. The response from Command came quickly. All ships were to retreat immediately. The Dominion fleet was too powerful. But Walker looked at his tactical display, at the 3 colony worlds that would be defenseless if the Defiant left. 30,000 civilians lived on those worlds. Farmers, miners, families with children. The Dominion wouldn't show them any mercy. Chief Martinez, Walker called over the ship's comm. How are those engine modifications coming along? Better than anyone would expect, Captain, Martins answered. Her voice carried the excitement of someone who'd been waiting for this moment. I've got the reactor running at 110% capacity. Weapons are hot. Shield generators are putting out more power than they did when this ship was new. Walker smiled. While everyone else saw an outdated warship, Martinez had seen potential. She'd spent months improving every system, finding ways to push them far beyond their original limits. The Defiant might be old, but she was far from helpless. All hands, battle stations, Walker ordered. The few crew members they had moved quickly to their posts. They'd drilled for this, prepared for this. They knew what was coming. The Dominion fleet spread out in a classic attack formation. Their ships were beautiful things, all smooth lines and gleaming metal. Next to them, the Defiant looked like exactly what everyone thought it was, an aging warship that should have been scrapped years ago. "They're broadcasting, sir," the communications officer reported. "They're ordering us to surrender or be destroyed." "Send them static," Walker said. "Let them think our communications are failing. Every seeming weakness could become an advantage if used properly." The first Dominion shots came as a test, energy beams reaching out across space. They hit the Defiant's shields that should have collapsed under such modern weapons. But Martinez had modified the old shield generators, and the Defiant shrugged off the attack. Shields holding at 95%, Martinez reported from engineering. "Their fancy new weapons aren't calibrated for our old-style shields. They're expecting modern defenses." Walker watched as the Dominion fleet moved closer, probably confused by the Defiant's survival. That's when he saw their mistake. They were spreading out too much, trying to surround one seemingly harmless old ship. Pride would be their downfall. "Helm, set course 030, Walker ordered. "Make it look like we're trying to run. Let's see how many of them take the bait." The Defiant turned slowly, like a wounded animal trying to escape. Several Dominion ships broke formation to chase them, exactly as Walker had hoped. He waited until they were committed to the pursuit before springing his trap. "All weapons, fire." The Defiant's old weapons might not have been as sophisticated as modern ones, but they had other advantages. They were simple, reliable, and thanks to Martinez's modifications, incredibly powerful. The first volley caught 3 Dominion ships completely by surprise. Their modern shields, designed to stop modern weapons, struggled against the Defiant's upgraded but old-style weapons. 2 enemy ships exploded immediately. The third spun out of control, its shields overwhelmed. The remaining Dominion ships scrambled to regroup, but the damage was done. Their perfect formation was broken. "They're trying to jam our targeting systems," the weapons officer reported with a grin. "But our old targeting computers don't use the frequencies they're jamming. We've got clear shots while they're flying blind." That was another advantage of being underestimated. The Dominion's electronic warfare was useless against the Defiant's outdated systems. While their ships struggled to target the old cruiser, Walker's crew had perfect firing solutions. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recent naval history. The Defiant moved like a dancer among the stars, its experienced crew using every trick learned over 30 years of service. When the Dominion ships tried to trap them with modern tactics, Walker countered with maneuvers so old they'd been forgotten by most captains. Port shields failing. Martinez called out after a particularly heavy hit. "Rerouting power now." "Helm, roll starboard," Walker ordered. "Show them our stronger shields while the port side recovers." The Defiant spun gracefully, turning its weakness away from the enemy. The move would have been dangerous in a modern ship, but the Defiant's sturdy frame could handle it. The Dominion fleet's formation had completely collapsed now. Instead of working together, their ships fought as individuals, each trying to be the one to kill the troublesome human vessel. Their pride made them predictable. "Target the lead ship," Walker commanded. "Full power to forward weapons." The Defiant's main guns spoke again, their energy beams cutting through space. The Dominion flagship's shields flickered and died. A second volley tore through its hull, turning the beautiful ship into expanding debris. "Enemy fleet is pulling back," the sensor officer reported. "They're trying to regroup." Walker watched as the Dominion ships retreated, clearly shocked by the loss of their flagship. They had expected an easy victory over a single outdated cruiser. Instead, they'd found themselves facing a warrior that refused to die. "Don't let them regroup," Walker ordered. "Push the attack. Show them what this old ship can really do." The Defiant surged forward, its engines burning far brighter than they should have been able to. Martinez had worked miracles with the old power systems, giving the ship speed and power that no one would have thought possible. The Dominion fleet scattered. Their coordination was gone, replaced by panic. Some ships tried to stand and fight, while others turned to run. The Defiant hunted them all, its weapons finding targets with deadly accuracy. In his command chair, Walker felt a fierce pride. His ship, the one everyone had written off as worthless, was proving itself against impossible odds. The crew worked their stations with perfect efficiency, every person exactly where they needed to be. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're picking up transmissions from the colonies. They can see the battle from the ground. They're cheering for us." Walker smiled. This was why they'd stayed. This was why they'd refused to give up on this old ship. Because sometimes the only thing standing between innocent people and disaster was a crew willing to fight impossible odds. The battle wasn't over, far from it, but the Defiant had proven something important. Age didn't matter as much as experience. Modern technology wasn't always better than tested, reliable systems. And most importantly, you should never, ever underestimate a ship and crew that had nothing left to lose. As the Dominion fleet continued to fall apart under the Defiant's assault, Walker made a silent promise. They would remember this day. They would remember the lesson of underestimating their opponents, and they would remember the name of the ship that everyone else had written off as worthless. Fire bloomed across the Defiant's bow as another Dominion ship exploded. Through the bridge viewport, Walker watched the pieces scatter across space like falling stars. His ship shuddered as enemy weapons found their mark, but the old armor held strong. 7 enemy ships destroyed, but many more remained. "Hull breach on deck 4. Martinez's voice crackled over the comm. "Emergency teams responding." "Captain, I've got an idea, but you're not going to like it." Walker gripped his chair as another blast rocked the ship. "I'm open to suggestions, Chief. Remember how I said the reactor could run at 110%? Well, I can push it to 140. It might melt down, but before it does..." Martinez paused as something exploded in engineering. "Before it does, we'll have enough power to punch through anything." The tactical display showed 28 Dominion ships still in fighting condition. They'd learned from their early mistakes and were now coordinating their attacks better. The Defiant's advantages of surprise and confusion were wearing thin. "Do it," Walker ordered, "but evacuate all non-essential personnel from engineering first." Warning lights flashed across every console as Martinez pushed the reactor beyond its limits. The deck plates vibrated under their feet as power surged through the ship's systems. Temperature warnings blared from multiple sections. "New contact," the sensor officer shouted. "Big one, coming in fast from Sector 7. Walker turned to the tactical display and felt his heart sink. A Dominion dreadnought had arrived, its massive form dwarfing even the other enemy ships. It was the kind of warship that could destroy entire fleets by itself. "All hands, brace for impact." Walker barely got the words out before the dreadnought's main guns fired. The blast caught the Defiant along its port side, sending the ship spinning through space. "Port armor down to 20%, Martinez reported. "That thing's got some serious firepower, Captain, but I've got a surprise for them too." The Defiant's spin hadn't been an accident. As the ship turned, Walker saw what Martinez had done. She'd overloaded the port armor plates just before impact, making them absorb far more damage than they should have been able to. The dreadnought had wasted its best shot. "Helm, bring us in close," Walker ordered. "They won't expect that. Those big ships always want to fight at range." The Defiant's engines roared as the old ship charged straight at the massive dreadnought. The enemy vessel's secondary weapons opened up, filling space with energy beams and missiles. But the Defiant's point defense systems, modified by Martinez's team, swatted the missiles from space, while the old shields absorbed the energy weapons. "Their targeting systems are having trouble with our speed," the tactical officer reported. "They're used to targeting bigger ships at long range. We're too close and too small for their main weapons now." Walker smiled. Another advantage of being underestimated. The Dreadnought's crew had never trained to fight small ships at close range. They'd probably thought no captain would be crazy enough to try it. "All weapons, target their sensor arrays," Walker commanded. "Let's blind this beast." The Defiant's guns spoke again, pouring fire into the Dreadnought's sensitive sensor systems. Modern warships depended heavily on advanced sensors. Without them, they were like giants swinging blindly in the dark. Martinez's voice came over the comm again, strained but excited. "Reactors holding at 135%, Captain. We've got more power than this ship's had since it was built. Want to see what these old guns can really do?" "Show me, Chief." The Defiant's main weapons had been modified far beyond their original specifications. When they fired this time, the energy beams were bright enough to leave afterimages in everyone's vision. They struck the Dreadnought's shields head-on, and for a moment nothing seemed to happen. Then the massive ship shields collapsed completely. The Defiant's second volley cut deep into its hull, targeting critical systems that Martinez had identified. The Dreadnought, pride of the Dominion fleet, began to list to one side. "The other enemy ships are moving to protect the Dreadnought," Tactical reported. "They're forming a defensive screen." Walker watched as the remaining Dominion ships clustered around their wounded flagship. It was the moment he'd been waiting for. When fighting a superior force, the goal wasn't to destroy every ship. It was to make them react exactly how you wanted them to. "Helm, attack pattern Delta," Walker ordered. "Engineering, give us everything you've got. Weapons, target the ships directly in front of us. Don't stop firing until we're through their line." The Defiant's engines burned white-hot as the ship accelerated to maximum speed. The enemy formation looked strong, but Walker had seen something his opponents hadn't. In their rush to protect the Dreadnought, they'd left a weak point in their defense. Multiple impacts. Someone shouted as enemy fire raked the Defiant's hull. Warning sirens blared throughout the ship, but Walker kept his eyes on the tactical display, watching as they drew closer to their target. "Now," he ordered. The Defiant's guns fired everything they had. At the same time, Martinez diverted every scrap of power to the forward shields. The old ship hit the enemy formation like a bullet through paper. 2 Dominion ships exploded as the Defiant's weapons found their marks. A third spun away, its entire side torn open. And then they were through, with the enemy fleet split in two behind them. The Dreadnought lay exposed, its defenses stripped away. "Engineering to bridge," Martinez called. "Whatever you're going to do it fast. The reactor can't take much more of this." Walker looked at his tactical display one last time. The remaining Dominion ships were trying to turn around to close the gap the Defiant had torn in their formation. But they were too slow, too clumsy in their panic. "All weapons, fire on the Dreadnought's engines," he ordered. "Don't let them get away." The Defiant's guns spoke one final time. Energy beams sliced through the Dreadnought's wounded hull, finding its massive engine cores. For a moment, the huge ship seemed to shudder. Then its engines exploded, the chain reaction tearing the mighty vessel apart from within. The blast wave hit the Defiant like a hammer, pushing the old ship through space. But decades-old armor and structural supports held together, proving once again that they didn't build ships like this anymore. "Dominion fleet is in full retreat," Tactical reported, wonder in his voice. "They're running, Captain. They're actually running." Walker watched as the surviving enemy ships fled in different directions, all coordination lost. The Dreadnought's destruction had broken their will to fight. No one had expected a single outdated cruiser to achieve something like this. In engineering, Martinez worked frantically to bring the reactor back under control. The Defiant had pushed far beyond its limits, but somehow the old ship had held together. Just like its crew, it had refused to give up when everyone else had written it off. "Stand down from battle stations," Walker ordered. "Begin damage control procedures." He looked out at the debris field that had once been a proud enemy fleet. "And someone get me a secure channel to command. I think we need to update them on our status." The bridge crew laughed, tension finally breaking. They had done the impossible. A single aging cruiser had stood against an entire fleet and emerged victorious. The colonies were safe, and the Dominion had learned a harsh lesson about underestimating their opponents. As damage reports came in and repair crews got to work, Walker felt a deep pride in his ship and crew. The Defiant might have been old, but today it had proven that age and experience could triumph over modern technology. Sometimes the strongest warriors were the ones that everyone else had forgotten about. Smoke filled the Defiant's corridors as damage control teams worked to contain the aftermath of battle. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls, and the ship's hull groaned with every movement. But they were alive. They had won. Walker walked through his wounded ship, checking on his crew and seeing the damage firsthand. Every few steps, someone would stop to salute or shake his hand. Their eyes showed pride mixed with disbelief. They had just destroyed a Dominion dreadnought and scattered an entire enemy fleet. The captain stopped at a viewport, looking out at the field of debris that surrounded them. Pieces of Dominion ships drifted past, their once beautiful hulls now twisted and broken. The sight reminded him of how close they had come to sharing that fate. "Captain to engineering," he called over the ship's comm. The system crackled with static but still worked. Like everything else on the Defiant, it refused to give up. "Engineering here," Martines answered, her voice tired but satisfied. "If you're coming down, watch your step. We've got coolant leaks everywhere, and the reactor's still running hotter than I'd like." Walker made his way down to engineering, passing more repair crews along the way. Every deck showed battle damage, but nothing the old ship couldn't survive. The Defiant had been built to take punishment and keep fighting. Engineering looked like a war zone. Steam hissed from broken pipes, and warning lights flashed on almost every console. Martine stood in the middle of it all, covered in grease and coolant, directing her teams like a conductor leading an orchestra. "How bad is it?" Walker asked, stepping carefully over a fallen support beam. Martinez wiped sweat from her face, leaving a streak of black grease across her forehead. "Bad enough. Good news is, the reactor didn't explode. Bad news is, we burnt out half our power systems pushing it that hard. We're running on backup generators for most systems." She led Walker to the main engineering display, pointing out the damage reports. "Port armor's almost gone. Starboard's not much better. Main guns are offline. We basically melted their power connectors. Life support's working, but environmental controls are shot. That's why it's so hot in here. Can we fix it?" "Already started. This old girl's tough. Everything that broke can be repaired." Martines patted a nearby console affectionately. "Might not be pretty, but we can get her running again. Just need time and materials." The ship's comm system crackled to life. "Bridge to captain. We're receiving multiple transmissions from the colonies. They want to thank us personally. And, sir, you need to see these sensor readings." Walker hurried back to the bridge, leaving Martinez to her repairs. When he arrived, his sensor officer was staring at the display with wide eyes. "What are we looking at?" Walker asked. "The colonies, sir. The Dominion ships we drove off. They were carrying ground troops, enough to occupy all 3 worlds. If we hadn't stopped them." The officer didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what the Dominion did to occupy colonies. The communications officer spoke up next. "Sir, the colonial governors are calling us heroes. They're spreading the word about what happened here. The Defiant's already becoming a legend on the frontier worlds." Walker sat in his command chair, feeling every one of the ship's 30 years in his bones. They had saved 3 worlds today. 30,000 lives protected by a ship that Command had wanted to scrap. "Signal from Command coming in," the communications officer reported. They're sending reinforcements. 3 battle groups should be here in about 6 hours. About time, someone muttered, drawing tired laughs from the bridge crew. The next few hours passed in a blur of damage control and repair work. The Defiant's crew worked tirelessly, patching systems and fixing what they could. They had to be ready in case any Dominion ships came back for revenge. A cheer went up from the sensor station when the first Union ships appeared. Modern battlecruisers and destroyers dropped out of faster-than-light travel, weapons ready, but they found only debris and a battered old cruiser that had somehow achieved the impossible. The commander of the relief force, Admiral Thompson, transported over to the Defiant as soon as he arrived. Walker met him in what was left of the main hangar bay. The Admiral looked around at the battle damage with disbelief. "The report said you destroyed a dreadnought," Thompson said. "I didn't believe it until I saw the wreckage." "How did you do it?" "This ship was supposed to be decommissioned." Walker smiled. "Sometimes the best ships are the ones everyone else has forgotten about, sir. The Dominion didn't expect us to fight. They definitely didn't expect us to win. Their overconfidence was their weakness." Thompson nodded slowly, still looking at the damage around them. "Your chief engineer sent us the reactor readings. By all rights, this ship should have torn itself apart. The power levels you were running. I've never seen anything like it." "The Defiant was built to last," Walker said simply. "They don't make them like this anymore." "No," Thompson agreed. "They certainly don't." He turned to face Walker directly. "I've already sent my report to Fleet Command. The decommissioning order has been canceled. In fact, they want to study what your engineer did with the reactor and weapon systems. This could change how we approach ship design." Walker felt pride swell in his chest. His ship hadn't just won a battle. It had proved that older designs still had value. That experience and determination could overcome superior technology. "There's more," Thompson continued. "The Dominion fleet you scattered. They ran straight into 2 of our patrol groups. Between the damage you did and our patrols, they lost over 80% of their ships. This is the biggest defeat they've suffered since the war began." Word spread quickly through the ship. The crew's pride grew even stronger when they learned the full impact of what they'd achieved. They hadn't just saved 3 colonies. They'd helped strike a major blow against humanity's enemies. In engineering, Martinez received the news while elbow-deep in reactor repairs. She smiled as she worked, already planning improvements to make the old ship even stronger. The Defiant had proven itself in battle, but she knew it could do even more. Walker stood on the bridge, watching as repair ships arrived to help fix the battle damage. The Defiant would need weeks of work to be fully operational again, but it would sail again, stronger than ever. Its days of being forgotten and overlooked were over. "Message from the colonies, sir," the communications officer reported. "They're asking permission to name their new orbital defense stations after the Defiant." Walker nodded, thinking about how much had changed in just one day. His old ship had arrived in this system as a relic, scheduled for destruction. Now it was a symbol of hope and resistance, proof that you should never judge something's worth by its age alone. The Defiant had been written off by everyone except its own crew. But that crew's faith had been rewarded. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, turning their ship's supposed weaknesses into strengths. The legend of the old cruiser that destroyed an Armada was already spreading through Union space, giving hope to other frontier worlds. And somewhere out there, the surviving Dominion ships carried a warning to their fleet. Beware the old ships. Sometimes they bite the hardest. 3 months after the battle, the Defiant floated in space dock, its hull gleaming with fresh paint. The scars of battle had been repaired, but the ship looked different now. Special markings along its side showed its battle honors, and the name Defiant stood out in bold letters that seemed to dare anyone to underestimate the old cruiser again. Walker stood in the observation room, watching as work crews made final adjustments to his ship. The Defiant had been in dock for 12 weeks, receiving not just repairs but improvements. Every system had been checked, tested, and upgraded based on what they'd learned during the battle. Quite a change from when they wanted to scrap her, Martine said, walking up beside him. The chief engineer looked different too. Her uniform now carried the rank of commander, a promotion earned by her incredible work during the battle. How are the improvements coming along? Walker asked, noting the excitement in his chief engineer's eyes. Better than anyone expected. The Union's best engineers have been studying what we did with the reactor and weapons. They said it shouldn't have been possible. Martines grinned. I showed them exactly how possible it was. Now they're refitting a dozen other older ships with similar modifications. That was perhaps the Defiant's greatest victory. Its success had forced the Union military to reconsider its attitude toward older vessels. Ships that had been scheduled for decommissioning were being evaluated for upgrade programs instead. Experience was being valued alongside technology. The ship's comm system chimed. Captain, Admiral Thompson requests your presence in the main briefing room. Says it's about our new assignment. Walker and Martinez made their way through the station's corridors. Everywhere they went, people stopped to stare and whisper. The crew of the Defiant had become celebrities after their victory. Everyone wanted to hear the story of how one old ship had destroyed a Dominion dreadnought and scattered an enemy fleet. Admiral Thompson waited for them with a group of senior officers. The briefing room's main screen showed a map of Union space, with particular focus on the frontier regions. Captain, Commander, Thompson greeted them. I trust the refit is proceeding well. Yes, sir, Martines answered. The Defiant will be ready for space trials by the end of the week. We've increased power output by another 20%, and the new targeting systems are fully integrated with our older weapons. Thompson nodded approvingly. Good, because we have a special mission for you. He gestured to the map. The Dominion has changed their tactics since your battle. They're avoiding confrontation with older Union ships, focusing only on targets they're certain they can overwhelm. This has actually given us an advantage. The Admiral touched a control, and several points on the map lit up. These are sectors we believe the Dominion will target next. Each one is defended by ships they would consider outdated. Ships like the Defiant. Walker understood immediately. They're traps. Exactly. The Dominion's overconfidence was their weakness before. Now we're going to use that weakness against them. Thompson smiled. And the Defiant will lead the operation. The briefing continued as Thompson laid out the details. The Defiant would command a squadron of similarly aged ships, all upgraded with Martinez's innovations. They would patrol the frontier, appearing vulnerable while actually being more than capable of handling any Dominion force they encountered. When the briefing ended, Walker and Martinez walked back through the station. They stopped at a viewport that offered a clear view of their ship. The Defiant's running lights were on, making it look alive and ready for action. Did you ever think we'd end up here? Martines asked. 3 months ago, they wanted to turn her into scrap. Now she's leading a whole squadron. Walker shook his head. I knew this ship had more to give. I just didn't know how much more. He looked at the special markings on the hull, each one representing a Dominion ship destroyed in the battle. The dreadnought's mark was largest of all. A group of new crew members passed by, heading toward the Defiant's docking port. The ship's complement had been increased to full strength, with many experienced officers requesting transfer to serve aboard the famous vessel. Everyone wanted to be part of the legend. The ship's comm system activated again. Engineering teams report all systems are ready for final testing, sir. Permission to begin power-up sequence. Walker shared a look with Martinez. They both knew what this meant. After 3 months of repairs and improvements, the Defiant was ready to fly again. Ready to show the Dominion that their first encounter hadn't been a fluke. Permission granted, Walker said. Begin power-up sequence. Through the viewport, they watched as the Defiant's systems came to life. The old ship hummed with power, its upgraded reactor providing more energy than any vessel its size should have been able to generate. Running lights brightened, and weapon ports cycled through their testing sequences. Message from Fleet Command. The communications officer reported. The rest of our squadron is assembling. 4 ships, All veterans like the Defiant. They're waiting for us to take command. Walker felt pride swell in his chest. His ship, once considered obsolete, was now leading others into battle. The Defiant had become more than just a single victory. It had become a symbol of everything the Union stood for: determination, innovation, and the refusal to give up even against impossible odds. The final preparations took less than a day. The Defiant's crew worked with practiced efficiency, storing supplies and running final system checks. Everyone knew their jobs, and everyone understood the importance of their mission. As Walker sat in his command chair for the first time since the battle, he looked around the bridge. New displays had been added, but the old reliable systems remained. The perfect blend of experience and innovation, just like the ship itself. All stations report ready, his first officer announced. Squadron is standing by for our signal. Walker nodded, feeling the familiar vibration of the Defiant's engines through the deck plates. Send word to the squadron. Tell them to form up on our position once we clear the dock. The massive space dock doors opened slowly, revealing the star-filled space beyond. The Defiant moved forward under its own power for the first time in 3 months, its engines burning bright and strong. One by one, their squadron fell into formation around them. Each ship was a veteran of countless battles, each one considered outdated by modern standards. But together, under the Defiant's command, they formed one of the most experienced combat units in the Union fleet. Squadron reports ready, communications announced. All ships at your command, sir. Walker looked out at the stars, thinking about how much had changed. The ship that everyone had written off had proven its worth in the hottest fire of battle. Now it would lead others to do the same, protecting the frontier and teaching the Dominion to fear the old ships they had once dismissed. Set course for the frontier, Walker ordered. Let's show them what experience can do. The Defiant led its squadron into faster-than-light travel, heading for the border worlds that needed their protection. They were the ships that everyone else had forgotten about, the ones that had been written off as obsolete. But they had survived while newer, more advanced vessels had fallen. Sometimes the strongest warriors were the ones with the most scars, the ones who had earned their strength through years of service and sacrifice. The Defiant had proven that. Now it would prove it again, leading a squadron of forgotten warriors to protect the worlds that needed them most. The legend of the old cruiser that destroyed an Armada had only begun. The best chapters were still to come. The emergency alarms blared through the command center of New Haven Colony's orbital defense station. Commander James Miller stood at the main viewport, his weathered face reflecting off the reinforced glass as he watched his fleet move into defensive positions. The Dominion attack force would arrive within hours. And once again, humanity would face an enemy that had superior numbers and technology. Miller ran his hand through his gray hair, thinking about the stories he had heard throughout his 30 years of service. Tales of a massive warship that appeared out of nowhere to save human colonies in their darkest hours. Most called it the Phantom Dawn, though Miller had heard other names for it too. Some said it was as big as a small moon. Others claimed it could destroy entire fleets without firing a shot. But in all his years fighting the Dominion, he had never seen it. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Robert Walsh from his station. Long-range scanners show 5 Dominion carrier groups approaching. Conservative estimate puts their numbers at least 5 times ours. Walsh was young but capable, the kind of officer Miller trusted to tell him the truth, even when it was bad news. Miller nodded, watching as more data scrolled across the main screen. The Dominion fleet would arrive in just under 4 hours. New Haven was home to nearly 3 million civilians, and evacuation would take at least 12 hours. The math wasn't good. Begin civilian evacuation immediately, Miller ordered. Priority to children and medical facilities, and get me a secure channel to Fleet Command. As his crew rushed to carry out his orders, Miller thought about all the times he had heard about the Phantom Dawn. The stories always seemed to come from a friend of a friend, or my cousin who serves in the outer colonies. Never any solid evidence, never any official confirmation. The communication officer's voice cut through his thoughts. Sir, Fleet Command is not responding. We're getting interference across all standard channels. The young woman's fingers flew across her console. Wait, sir, we're receiving a transmission. But it's different. Miller walked to her station. Different how? It's using an encryption I've never seen before. Very old, maybe. The computer is having trouble. She stopped as text began appearing on her screen. Miller leaned in close, his eyes widening as he read the message. It was a set of coordinates, followed by a single line of text. When hope fails, seek the dawn. The coordinates pointed to a location deep in the hollow asteroid field, a dangerous region of space that most ships avoided. Sir, Walsh called out again. First wave of civilian transports is launching now, but the Dominion fleet has increased speed. They'll be here in 3 hours, not 4. Miller stood straight, his mind racing. The coordinates could be a trap or a waste of precious time they didn't have. But something about the message felt right. In 30 years, he had learned to trust his instincts. Walsh, you have command of the evacuation. Get as many civilians out as you can. Miller turned to his navigation officer. Plot a course to these coordinates. I'm taking the Swift Star. Walsh looked up from his station, surprise clear on his face. Sir, the Swift Star is our fastest ship, but it's a light cruiser. If you run into any Dominion forces, then I'll die just as dead as I would here, Miller finished. But if there's even a small chance the stories are true, we have to try. Our people need more than a fighting chance. They need a miracle. As Miller headed for the docking bay, his personal communicator buzzed. A message from Dr. Emma Turner, the colony's head of engineering. I'm coming with you. He started to type a rejection, then stopped. If they did find something, they might need her expertise. The Swift Star was a beautiful ship, all sleek lines and efficient design. Small enough to be crewed by minimal personnel, but advanced enough to hold its own in a fight. As Miller boarded, he found Dr. Turner already at the engineering station, her tools spread out around her. I wasn't going to take no for an answer, she said without looking up from her work. Her dark skin was marked with grease stains, and her curly hair was tied back in a practical bun. Besides, you'll need someone who can tell if we're looking at advanced technology or just space junk. The ship launched smoothly, its engines pushing them quickly away from the colony. Through the view screen, Miller could see the civilian ships streaming away in the opposite direction, while the defense fleet moved into position to buy them time. He had served with many of those crews. Good people, preparing to die so others could live. The hollow asteroid field lived up to its name. Massive rocks, many of them riddled with natural tunnels and caves, floated in complex patterns. The Swift Star's advanced navigation systems struggled to plot a safe course through the chaos. As they penetrated deeper into the field, their sensors began to act strangely. We're getting some odd readings, Dr. Turner reported. Energy signatures that don't make sense. They're there one moment, gone the next, like echoes of something big. The coordinates led them to a particularly dense cluster of asteroids. As they drew closer, Miller noticed something odd about their arrangement. Too regular, too precise. Those asteroids, he said slowly, they're not natural, are they? Dr. Turner shook her head. No, they're in a perfect defensive formation. And look at their surface composition. They're covered in some kind of stealth material. Old, but incredibly advanced. As they approached the center of the asteroid formation, their ship's communication system crackled to life. A deep, artificial voice spoke. Identity confirmed. Commander James Miller, Human Defense Fleet. Dr. Emma Turner, New Haven Engineering Division. Welcome to Project Dawn. The asteroids began to move, shifting position like pieces of a giant puzzle. In the space they revealed, a massive station slowly became visible, its dark surface barely distinguishable from the void of space. It had clearly been built for ships much larger than the Swift Star. Miller's communicator buzzed again. A message from Walsh. Dominion fleet 2 hours out. Multiple capital ships confirmed. Sir, we're not going to be able to hold them. As the Swift Star docked with the ancient station, Miller thought about all the stories he had heard about the Phantom Dawn. In a few hours, he would either prove those stories true or die trying. Either way, he knew this would be a day the history books would remember, if there was anyone left to write them. The ancient station's corridors were dark and cold, filled with stale air that hadn't moved in decades. Miller and Dr. Turner's footsteps echoed as they made their way deeper into the structure, their helmet lights casting long shadows on the walls. Every few minutes, Miller's communicator would buzz with increasingly desperate updates from New Haven. Main defense line is breaking. Walsh's latest message read, Dominion ships are launching fighters. Civilian casualties reported in sectors 3 and 7. Dr. Turner studied her handheld scanner as they walked. These energy readings are off the charts. Whatever power source this station uses, it's still active. But it's deep inside, maybe a kilometer below us. She pointed to a junction ahead. We should head down. They found a maintenance lift that still worked, its old motors groaning as it carried them into the depths of the station. Miller thought about the millions of people back at New Haven, about the families trying to escape while his fleet fought a losing battle. He had seen too many colonies fall to the Dominion, had written too many letters to families of dead crew members. The lift stopped at a massive door marked Primary Docking Control. It took both of them to turn the manual release wheel. As the door slowly opened, their lights revealed a room filled with ancient but advanced-looking control panels. A large window looked out into darkness. Dr. Turner rushed to the main console. This technology, it's incredible. Looks like human design, but nothing like what we use today. Give me a few minutes to figure out the power systems. Miller's communicator buzzed again. A video message from Walsh showed chaos in the command center. Alarms blared in the background, and smoke filled the air. Sir, we've lost the outer defense platforms. Dominion forces have broken through in 3 sectors. Civilian casualties are. An explosion rocked the command center, and the video cut out. How much longer? Miller asked, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. Almost there. Dr. Turner's fingers flew across the console. These systems are complicated, but they're responding. Whatever's in that hangar, it's still. She stopped as lights began coming on, not just in the control room, but beyond the window. The darkness outside their window slowly transformed as massive floodlights activated one by one, revealing a sight that made both of them gasp. A ship hung in the massive space, held by docking clamps that looked like the fingers of a giant hand. It was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest human battleship Miller had ever seen. Its hull was dark and angular, covered in weapon systems unlike anything in the current human fleet. The Phantom Dawn, Miller whispered. It's real. And it's powered up, Dr. Turner added, her eyes wide as she read the displays. The reactor is active, just in low power mode. Life support, weapons, all systems are functional. It's been waiting here all this time, like a sword in its scabbard. A new voice filled the room, coming from the station speakers. It was smooth and artificial, but carried a note of authority. Welcome, Commander Miller. I am Atlas, the artificial intelligence of the Phantom Dawn. You have arrived at a critical moment. Miller stepped forward. We need your help. The colony of New Haven is under attack. Millions of lives are at stake. I am aware of the situation, Atlas replied. I have been monitoring communications. However, you should understand what you are asking. The Phantom Dawn was sealed here for a reason. Its power could change the nature of this war. Another message from Walsh appeared. Multiple breaches in the colony's hull. Emergency force fields failing. Estimate 30 minutes until total defense failure. It's been an honor, sir. We don't have time for philosophy, Miller said to Atlas. Right now, I need to know 2 things. Can this ship fight, and can we get it to New Haven in time? There was a pause before Atlas responded. Yes to both questions, but I require a command crew. Minimal operations need at least 3 humans, a commander, an engineer, and a weapons officer. You have a commander and an engineer, Miller said. And I'm betting you can handle weapons better than any human officer. Correct. Very well. Dr. Turner, please proceed to engineering through the port access tunnel. Commander Miller, the bridge is accessible via the starboard lift. I will begin launch preparations. As they hurried to their stations, the massive ship came fully alive around them. Lights blazed along its hull, and the sound of powerful systems spinning up echoed through the station. Miller found the bridge to be surprisingly small for such a large ship, with most stations clearly designed to be operated by the AI. All systems online. Atlas announced as Miller strapped into the command chair. Dr. Turner reports engineering is ready. Docking clamps releasing. Commander, I must inform you that this ship's capabilities may be disturbing to witness. Are you prepared for that? Miller thought of New Haven, of the civilians dying while they talked. Atlas, right now the only thing that disturbs me is delay. Take us out. The Phantom Dawn's engines ignited with a power that made the entire station shudder. The massive ship rose from its berth, like a predator waking from hibernation. As they cleared the asteroid field, Atlas spoke again, plotting course to New Haven Colony. Commander, I suggest you warn any surviving human forces to pull back upon our arrival. What they are about to see may cause them to react unpredictably. How fast can we get there? Miller asked, watching as the ship's systems reported ready status across his displays. The Phantom Dawn's drive system operates on principles your scientists have not yet discovered, Atlas replied. We will arrive in approximately 7 minutes. Miller sat back in his chair, his heart pounding. After 30 years of war, after countless defeats and retreats, after watching colony after colony fall to the Dominion, humanity's greatest legend was about to reveal itself. He thought of all the stories he had heard about the Phantom Dawn, all the rumors and myths. Atlas, he said as the ship prepared for its jump to New Haven, why do I get the feeling that all those stories didn't even scratch the surface of what this ship can do? The AI's response carried what sounded almost like anticipation. Commander Miller, I believe the phrase you humans use is, you ain't seen nothing yet. The Phantom Dawn's drive engaged, and reality itself seemed to bend around them. They were on their way to either save New Haven or add one more legendary story to the ship's mysterious history. Either way, Miller knew that after today, the war would never be the same. The stars blurred past the Phantom Dawn's viewports as they rushed toward New Haven. Miller watched the ship's systems come fully online, displays showing power levels that seemed impossible. In engineering, Dr. Turner's voice came over the internal communications, filled with amazement as she studied the ship's capabilities. Commander, these readings. The power core isn't like anything I've ever seen. It's not fusion, not antimatter. It's like it's drawing energy directly from dark matter itself. She paused, and Miller could hear her fingers flying across control panels. Atlas, how is this possible? The Phantom Dawn was built during the early days of the war, Atlas replied, its artificial voice echoing through the bridge. Your scientists had discovered principles of dark matter manipulation that were deemed too dangerous to pursue. This ship represents the peak of that research before it was banned. A warning light flashed on Miller's console. Multiple Dominion ships detected at New Haven, Atlas announced. They are systematically destroying the colony's defensive installations. Surviving human vessels are attempting to cover civilian evacuation ships. Miller leaned forward in his command chair. How long until we arrive? 3 minutes. Commander, you should understand what you're about to witness. The Phantom Dawn's primary weapon system doesn't just use dark matter for power, it weaponizes it. The effects can be unsettling. Through the view screen, Miller watched as space itself seemed to twist around the ship. Dr. Turner's voice came through again, more urgent this time. The power readings are spiking. Whatever this ship does with dark matter, it's not just pulling energy from it. It's reshaping it somehow. Correct, Atlas said. The Phantom Dawn can create localized areas where the laws of physics become negotiable. This is why the ship was sealed away. Some felt this level of power shouldn't exist, even to defend humanity. The ship shuddered slightly as it prepared to drop out of faster-than-light travel. Miller opened a channel to what remained of the New Haven Defense Fleet. This is Commander Miller to all human ships. Fall back to minimum safe distance from the Dominion Fleet. I repeat, clear the engagement zone immediately. Approaching New Haven space, Atlas announced. Dominion Fleet consists of 27 capital ships and approximately 200 support vessels. They are launching a final assault on the colony's main habitat ring. Miller thought of all the civilians still trapped there, of Walsh and his crew fighting a hopeless battle. Atlas, how many of our ships are still out there? 7 operational vessels remaining. They are withdrawing as ordered, though with some reluctance. The Dominion Fleet is tracking our approach. They appear confused. The Phantom Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the Dominion Fleet. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The massive human ship, 3 times larger than anything humanity had ever fielded, cast a shadow over the enemy vessels. Miller could imagine the chaos on their bridges as they tried to understand what they were seeing. Dominion flagship is broadcasting, Atlas reported. Admiral Krell wishes to speak with us. Miller nodded. Put him through. A harsh voice filled the bridge. Unknown vessel, you enter a combat zone. Your design is not in our database, but your energy signature reads as human. Surrender immediately or be destroyed with the rest of this pathetic colony. Miller looked at his tactical display. The Dominion ships were moving to surround them, their weapons charging. On the colony below, he could see explosions as the enemy continued their assault. His response was calm but firm. This is Commander James Miller of the Human Defense Fleet. I suggest you check your older databases. Look for references to the Phantom Dawn. There was a long pause. When Krell's voice returned, it carried a note of uncertainty. The Phantom Dawn is a myth, human propaganda. You expect us to believe. Atlas. Miller cut him off. Show them what this ship can do. Target their lead destroyer. With pleasure, Commander. The AI's voice carried an almost eager tone. Engaging dark matter manipulation systems. The space around the Dominion destroyer began to distort. It was subtle at first. A shimmer in the void, like heat waves rising from hot ground. Then reality itself seemed to fold around the ship. The destroyer's shields flared and died, unable to defend against something that attacked the fabric of space itself. By the void, Krell's voice whispered, all ships, open fire. Destroy that abomination. The Dominion fleet responded with everything they had. Energy weapons, projectiles, and torpedoes streaked toward the Phantom Dawn. But instead of impacting the ship's shields, they seemed to vanish into ripples of distorted space around the hull. The Phantom Dawn's dark matter field is absorbing their attacks, Dr. Turner reported from engineering, her voice filled with awe. It's not just blocking them, it's collecting their energy. Correct, Atlas confirmed. And now, we return their power to them, modified by our field. The space around the Phantom Dawn rippled again, and the absorbed energy lashed out at the Dominion fleet. But it was changed, twisted by the dark matter field into something that ignored shields and armor as if they didn't exist. 3 Dominion cruisers simply ceased to exist, the space they occupied folding in on itself. Multiple enemy ships are attempting to retreat, Atlas reported. Their sensors cannot comprehend our defense systems. They are, to use a human phrase, shooting blind. Miller watched as the mighty Dominion fleet began to break apart under the Phantom Dawn's assault. Ships that had terrorized human space for decades were now fleeing from a legend come to life. But he also saw something disturbing in the way space itself warped and twisted at the ship's command. Atlas, he said quietly, I understand now why this ship was sealed away. This kind of power, it changes everything about how we think of warfare. Yes, the AI replied. The question now becomes, what will humanity do with this power, now that it has been awakened again. As the last Dominion ships fled or fell, Miller looked down at New Haven. The colony was damaged, but intact, its people saved by a myth that turned out to be real. But he knew that after today, everything would change. The war, the balance of power, perhaps even humanity's understanding of physics itself, none of it would ever be the same. The Phantom Dawn had awakened, and the galaxy would tremble at its rise. The surviving Dominion ships regrouped at the edge of the New Haven system, their formation ragged and uncertain. Through the Phantom Dawn's advanced sensors, Miller could see their crews scrambling to repair damage and make sense of what had just happened to them. Admiral Krell's flagship remained at the front of their fleet, but it had pulled back to a safer distance. "They're preparing for another attack," Atlas announced, its artificial voice calm despite the tension. "Their sensors are actively scanning us, attempting to understand our defensive systems. Admiral Krell is adapting his strategy." Dr. Turner's voice came up from engineering, excitement mixing with concern. "Commander, the dark matter systems are still charging from their last assault. We absorbed enough energy to power a small colony for a year, but these power levels, they're not meant to be sustained for long periods." Miller watched as more data scrolled across his command display. The Phantom Dawn had already destroyed or disabled a third of the Dominion fleet, but the remaining ships were regrouping with purpose. "Atlas, what are they doing?" "They are attempting to calculate a safe attack vector. Their tactical computers are running scenarios." "Interesting. They believe our dark matter field has a limited range. They are not entirely incorrect." The Dominion ships began to move, spreading out in a complex pattern. Miller recognized the formation. It was designed to divide the defenders' attention, force them to spread their defenses thin. "They're going to try to overwhelm us from multiple angles." "A logical strategy," Atlas agreed. "However, they still don't understand what they're facing." "Dr. Turner, please redirect power from secondary systems to the field generators." "Commander Miller, I suggest we show them why this ship became a legend." The Dominion fleet launched their attack. Hundreds of energy beams and projectiles approached from all directions, too many for any normal ship to track. But the Phantom Dawn was far from normal. The space around the massive ship began to ripple and twist, creating patterns that hurt the eye to look at. "Multiple contacts incoming," Atlas reported. "Field generators at maximum capacity, preparing to redirect their energy." Miller watched in awe as the Phantom Dawn's dark matter field caught the incoming fire. Instead of explosive impacts, the attacks seemed to spiral into invisible whirlpools that formed around the ship. Dr. Turner's excited voice filled the bridge again. "The field is working perfectly. It's not just stopping their attacks. It's converting the energy into forms we can use." "Atlas, the power readings are incredible." "Indeed," the eye replied. "Now observe what happens when we return their power to them, modified by our understanding of dark matter physics." The space around the Phantom Dawn seemed to fold in on itself, and then unfold in impossible ways. The absorbed energy lashed out at the Dominion fleet, but it wasn't simple returned fire. Where the energy touched enemy ships, reality itself seemed to hiccup. Shields failed, not because they were overwhelmed, but because the laws of physics that made them work simply stopped applying. Admiral Krell's voice crackled over the communication channel, a mix of rage and fear in his tone. "What kind of abomination have you humans created? This violates every law of nature." "You're wrong, Admiral," Miller replied calmly. "We didn't violate the laws of nature. We just learned to read the fine print." Through the view screen, Miller watched as more Dominion ships fell to the Phantom Dawn's power. Some simply ceased to exist, the space they occupied folding into nothing. Others found their weapons turning against them, their own energy being redirected through twisted space to strike their allies. "Commander," Dr. Turner called out, "the power core is reaching critical levels. We need to finish this soon or vent the excess energy." Atlas's voice carried a note of what almost sounded like satisfaction. I believe I can solve both problems at once. Commander Miller, please watch your main display. This is something the ship's original designers theorized, but never had the chance to test. The dark matter field around the Phantom Dawn began to pulse with visible energy. The excess power they had absorbed from the Dominion fleet gathered into swirling patterns of distorted space. Then, with a flash that seemed to bend light itself, the energy released in a wave that spread out through the enemy fleet. Where the wave passed, Dominion ships simply stopped. Their engines died, their weapons went silent, and their shields flickered out. They hung in space like toys with their batteries removed, their crews trapped inside as their ship's energy was drained away. What did you do to them? Miller asked, staring at the display in shock. The dark matter wave temporarily created a space where electrical energy cannot flow, Atlas explained. Their ships will regain power in approximately 1 hour, more than enough time for them to consider retreat as their best option. Admiral Krell's voice came through again, but this time it was quiet, almost humble. Commander Miller, the Dominion fleet requests terms for withdrawal. Miller looked at his tactical display. Nearly half the Dominion fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The rest were either powerless or in retreat. New Haven was saved, and humanity had just demonstrated power that would change the course of the war. But looking at the distorted space still rippling around his ship, Miller felt a chill. "You may withdraw, Admiral," he said finally. "Take your disabled ships with you, but deliver this message to your leaders. The next time the Dominion attacks a human colony, they won't just face our regular fleets. They'll face the Phantom Dawn. And now you can tell them it's not just a myth." As the surviving Dominion ships began to retreat, Dr. Turner came up to the bridge. Her face was flushed with excitement as she looked over the battle data. "Commander, what we just saw. It changes everything we thought we knew about physics, about what's possible in warfare." "That's what concerns me," Miller replied, watching the last Dominion ships limp away. "Atlas, you said this ship was sealed away for a reason. Now I understand why. This kind of power, it doesn't just win battles, it changes the rules of war itself." "Correct," Atlas said. "And now humanity must decide what to do with this power. The Phantom Dawn is awake, and it cannot be hidden away again. The galaxy now knows we exist." Miller looked out at the stars, thinking about how the war would change now that humanity's greatest legend had proven real. The Phantom Dawn had saved New Haven, but it had also opened a door that could never be closed. The only question was, what would humanity find on the other side? The cleanup around New Haven took several days. The Phantom Dawn remained in orbit, its massive form casting shadows over the repair ships as they worked to fix the colony's damaged sections. Miller spent most of his time coordinating with the colony's leadership and sending reports to Fleet Command, though he kept certain details about the ship's true capabilities vague. Word had spread quickly through human space. The legendary ghost ship was real, and it had sent a Dominion battle fleet running. Already, stories were spreading about how it bent space itself, about weapons that ignored the laws of physics. Some of the stories were wild exaggerations. Some weren't exaggerated enough. Miller stood on the Phantom Dawn's observation deck, looking down at New Haven. Dr. Turner worked at a console nearby, still fascinated by the ship's systems. "The dark matter readings are stable now," she reported, "but I'm finding something interesting in the ship's database. Atlas, these designs, there are more of them, aren't there?" "Correct," the eye replied. "The Phantom Dawn was the first, but not the last ship designed using these principles. The others were never built. Their plans were sealed away in various hidden facilities across human space." Miller turned from the window. "More ships like this one. Why weren't they built?" "The same reason I was sealed away," Atlas said. "The scientists and military leaders of that time feared what would happen if this technology became common. They worried that weapons capable of bending reality would lead to a kind of war that could tear space itself apart." Dr. Turner looked up from her console. They were right to be worried. The power this ship controls. If something went wrong, it could create tears in spacetime that might never heal. The Dominion fleet got a taste of what this technology can do. Imagine if they reverse-engineered it, started building their own dark matter weapons. Miller nodded slowly. He had been thinking the same thing. The Phantom Dawn had saved New Haven and would likely save many more colonies, but its existence had changed the rules of warfare forever. The Dominion would adapt, would search for countermeasures. They might even find those other hidden facilities. Atlas, he said, you've been monitoring Dominion communications. What are they saying about us? Their military command is in chaos. Some advocate immediate development of defensive measures against dark matter weapons. Others want to sue for peace while they still can. A few suggest destroying any human world that might house similar ships before they can be activated. The observation deck fell silent as they considered this. Finally, Dr. Turner spoke up. Commander, we have to tell Fleet Command everything. About the other designs, about the hidden facilities. If the Dominion finds even one of them. I agree, Miller said. But there's something else we need to consider. Atlas, you said the ship's designers feared what would happen if this technology became common. But now that the Phantom Dawn is active, that knowledge is out there. We can't put it back in the box. No, Atlas agreed. But you can choose how to use it. The Phantom Dawn systems were not designed solely for destruction. The ability to manipulate dark matter, to bend space itself. These technologies could revolutionize human civilization. They could make faster-than-light travel more efficient, create energy sources that would never run dry, even terraform worlds thought uninhabitable. Dr. Turner's eyes lit up at the possibilities. We could establish colonies in places the Dominion would never think to look. Build ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of years. The applications for peaceful use are endless. Miller walked to the main console, studying the display of New Haven below. The colony's lights shone brightly against the darkness of space, its people safe, because a myth had proven real. But myths, he knew, often carried warnings along with their power. We need to find those other facilities, he said finally. Not to build weapons, but to understand what else this technology can do. The Dominion needs to know we have this power, but they also need to know we won't use it recklessly. A wise choice, Atlas said. There is something else you should know. The Phantom Dawn's creators left more than just ship designs in those hidden facilities. They left messages, warnings, and discoveries that went far beyond weapons. They saw a future where humanity could either destroy itself with this power or use it to become something greater. Dr. Turner moved to another console, her fingers flying over the controls. I'm detecting strange energy signatures from deep space, similar to the Phantom Dawn's power core, but much fainter. Atlas, are these? Yes, the other facilities are calling out. They recognize that their time has come. The question is, what will humanity do with what they find inside them? Miller thought about everything that had happened. A legend had come to life and saved his people, but it had also opened the door to power that could reshape the galaxy. Now humanity had to choose what to do with that power. We'll find those facilities, he said, but we'll do it carefully, thoughtfully. The Phantom Dawn wasn't just sealed away because it was powerful. It was sealed away because humanity wasn't ready for its power. Maybe now we are, or maybe now we don't have a choice. He looked out at the stars, thinking about how many other myths might be waiting out there, how many other secrets humanity's ancestors had hidden away until they were needed. The war had changed today, but so had humanity's future. The Phantom Dawn had shown them what was possible. Atlas, he said, set a course for Fleet Command. It's time to tell them everything. And then we have some facilities to find. The massive ship's engines hummed to life, its dark matter systems creating ripples in space that were barely visible to the eye. As they left New Haven behind, Miller knew that the legend of the Phantom Dawn was only beginning. The myth had become reality, and reality, he had learned, was often stranger than any story they could tell about it.